Welcome to Bleach Revisited. I am Karagold, your host of this series in which we will be reading every single chapter of the Bleach manga, providing critical analysis of the art and narrative, personal response to the chapter, and discussion of how that chapter connects to the rest of the series. As usual, we begin these videos with a reading of the chapter that we are currently on. This is Chapter 74, Amputation. Bleach, Chapter 74, Amputation. Whoa! What did Ichigo do? That huge... He knocked him out? Whoa! That could have been bad. I can't believe I slipped and fell on my butt. Huh? What's that look? Oh, you thought I was out, didn't you? Ha ha! You don't know much if you think you can knock me out. That's why I hate Hicks. They're ignorant. Just wait. One more whack with my axe. My axe. Both my axes. My axes are. My axes. Huh? They're broken. They're broken. My axes are broken. Now he's crying. What's going on? Sounds like a siren. I don't know what to say, but I'm sorry? I guess I didn't have to break both of them. You... Oh... You're a nice guy. You and I are enemies, but you still feel sorry for me. You've got a big heart. What could I do? You started bawling like a baby. Look at me, crying over a couple of broken axes. How can I call myself a man? Utter defeat. Huh? Utter defeat as a warrior and as a man. I've been utterly defeated by you. 300 years I've been the gatekeeper of the White Road Gate. I've never lost before. You're the first man to beat me. You can pass. Jidanbo authorizes you to pass through the White Road Gate. Thanks! Can we pass through too? Sure. Your leader beat me, so I can't stop you. What? Ichigo, our leader? Are you kidding? What are you getting mad about? Ichigo, is that your name? Yeah. Ichigo Kurosaki. Ichigo, huh? What a cute little name that is. It's not cute. The Ichi part means first place, and the Go stands for guardian. There's nothing cute about it. Be careful, Ichigo. I don't know why you want to pass through that gate, but there's a bunch of mean guys in here. I know. Alright. Well, as long as you know, here. Step back and I'll open the gate. Don't be scared. It looks harder than it is. Wow. Whoa! Wow. He lifted it. What's wrong? Why'd you stop? Something happened? Oh. Oh. Who the heck's that? The leader of the third company, Gen Ichimaru. Uh-oh, this won't do. Won't do at all. A gatekeeper ain't supposed to open gates. Oop, accidentally cut it a little bit. Little bit of a spoiler there for the next chapter, huh? Went forward 2 pages. Here's the in between. Let's hop back to the beginning of this chapter, though, and let's get into everything that we're going to talk about. So, discussion and analysis, personal response as well for Chapter 74 here, Amputation. Again, coming right off the end of the last chapter that we were on with the shattering of Jidambo's axes by Ichigo. Of course, I love that we start with this really zoomed in expression on Jidambo, this absolute shock, and then we get those little shards of his axe flying everywhere, and then that zoom out for that moment as he's still holding both the handles. And then, of course, he falls back over, and we get Ichigo front and center, having knocked him over. I think this page works pretty well for me, especially establishing, again, just the power of that one sort of stroke of Ichigo's. Yeah, good stuff, effective. Brings us into our title page, which we get the flip side of that, where we're getting the follow through with Ichigo. Probably maybe the most literal straight up title page that we've gotten so far in a while, but yet another chance to just kind of show Ichigo looking cool, I suppose. Not quite our usual cover spread. I mean, maybe even just considering that's a part of the manga more than it is, like I say, color spread, rather than it is a title page. But here I really do love that we get to see that jagged mark that Jidambo left on the gate in the wall. I think that's really cool. And just the scope of it, because obviously Jidambo's been knocked over and now only the wall stands between them, right? And, I really do love the surprise from Jidambo as well as everyone else. Like they're pretty amazed by Ichigo's power, and rightfully so. I mean, this is a pretty strong moment coming out of Ichigo, right? So I'm glad that it's given the sort of gravity, because it knocked down this giant, you see, that it should have, right? That said, of course, Jidambo hops back up, and I love that he's in absolute denial. Some 5 stages of grief right here, but right away, I love that this more serious sort of character that we've had, this giant, is quickly rendered into kind of a goofier character, and we even get him to see him being a little bit more squat and making these sort of cartoonish expressions. And I love that quickly gets juxtaposed. So he's like, okay, well, I'll just finish whacking you with my axe, and then he has to cope with the reality of the situation that his axes have been shattered. And I love this point of view shot down to his hand, kind of gripping at the remaining handle of his axe. It's good stuff. Of course, the fact that he looks. I love that he looks back and forth and sees that it is both of his axes. But I think all in all, solid kind of moment of his absolute surprise, because he spent 300 years defending this place. He didn't think anybody ever be able to stand up to him like this, much less destroy his axes. So it really helps to sell the moment from his point of view, as just this kind of incredible and unbelievable thing. At least from an invader from the outside. We come to see, Gin strikes him down pretty quickly, so there are people that are definitely more dangerous on the other side of that wall. It's just that Jidambo doesn't have to come across them. But I do like that we get this very different take on Jidambo that immediately, this force that we had that was barring our entry, that was this kind of very powerful entity that we were faced up against. We also get to see a little bit of that humanity there, and I do like that. It's obviously it's played for a bit for laughs. You don't expect the big strong character to start crying over his axes and have such an attachment to them. and to throw a little tantrum. Of course, we have everybody else's expressions to sort of set off that. But I do like that we get Ichigo, even though this is his enemy, this is a guy that literally just tried to kill him. Ichigo's here like apologizing and being really thoughtful, and I do appreciate that. It yet again highlights, I think, one of Ichigo's strengths, which is his capability to see the humanity in others and to actually make those bonds, and even if it's somebody that is literally willing to kill him. Um, and unlike a lot of series, like I don't think it's played up in the way that it could be. We don't ever get Ichigo, people being like, but Ichigo always sees the best in others. Or Ichigo being like, even though you're a monster that tried to smash me down, I am still gonna choose to see that you are my Nakama, or whatever the bullshit. Anyway, what I'm saying is that they could definitely lean really hard into that trope, but they don't. Like it's more genuine, and I think it's more sincere because of it. That it just comes off that way. Anyway, of course, I like that Jidambo recognizes Ichigo not just as a powerful opponent, but a nice guy. That even though they are enemies, he still feels sorry for him, right? Of course, I love that Ichigo in his position, he's like, well, yeah, you started crying, you know. And Jidambo really sees this as like a personal failure of his, right? That he is felt as a man, that he's crying over a bunch of axes, that like showing that sort of emotion or grief is demasculating to an extent, or emasculating. That he's been defeated as a warrior and man, that Ichigo has beaten him as a warrior and caused him this great personal sort of grief, which he openly is upset, but Ichigo's the kind of quote unquote bigger man, able to apologize over this and try to make amends despite them being enemies, right? And I don't know, like I think mostly that highlights maybe some of the things that are going on in Soul Society, and we'll get a little bit more of that inequity throughout, and a little bit more of that sort of expectation, right? And I think that's ultimately what this chapter is about, is that Soul Society has these very strict sort of expectations for not just its citizens, but also obviously for the Shinigami, and that breaking those expectations, obviously in the case of Rukia, it could lead to death, but here with Jidambo, he gets his arm sliced off, right? This whole chapter is called amputation. So there's a pretty strict sort of guideline for what to follow, and it does follow these sort of these broader sorts of things, right? If we think don't show emotions, that emotions are unbefitting of a Soul Reaper, right? Everything that Byakuya and Rukia really kind of embody, at least in that last little bit there. And Rukia, even though we know that that's maybe her trying to kind of bring herself back to that Shinigami way of thinking, as she starts to say that these things are pointless, that they're just going to make you weaker, et cetera, et cetera. So we really get this idea that as, obviously, if you cry about something that you're attached to, that doesn't make you a failure. But within Soul Society's lens, within this kind of very militarized, even patriarchal sort of society, we get the sense that if you show this open emotion like this, if you show this grief, that is your failure, right? That does make you less, of a man, or of a worthwhile person. But also, that's coupled here with his failure as a warrior, right? That his value is in that of being a gate guard, of being able to defeat these enemies. And so whenever somebody defeats him, that strikes him just as heavily. So it's kind of telling, right, of the values that Soul Society has, and I do appreciate that it's a sort of reminder of those, even if it's given to us in a kind of goofy moment with this giant. Obviously, the gentle giant type is it's something that we've explored already with Chad, right? Where Chad is much more caring and maybe sentimental, despite being a large character with a lot of power. And we get that here also from Jidambo. It tends to be a kind of a trope, and I think it's used well and in different ways here in Bleach. Nevertheless, I like that Jidambo, he recognizes Ichigo's strength and he lets him through, right? That he defers to Ichigo, even though that's definitely not something that he should do, from what we come to learn. But it's the sort of thing where I think Jidambo realizes that if he doesn't let Ichigo pass, if they continue this conflict, Ichigo might have to actually kill Jidambo, and that's very much something that definitely would come to pass. So I like that we get this shot here where it's looking up at Jidambo and we get to see the gate behind him as Ichigo is given pass to the gate. We looked up at Ichigo and then we get back to the gate without Jidambo in the way. Of course, really helps to express that sense of, hey, we've gotten past this obstacle, and from here on out, Jidambo is of course drawn in a much less imposing way. I love that Uryu takes umbrage with Ichigo being their leader. It's surprising here. We don't get to see any of Yorichi at all again in this chapter, as far as I'm aware. So, shame. I will say that is one thing. I wish that we had a little bit more Yorichi, but maybe Yorichi is just trying to stay to the sidelines and let them have this interaction for themselves. I do like that Jidambo calls Ichigo's name cute, and we get this kind of inference for Ichigo's name, right? The Ichi being first place, the Go standing for guardian. As we know, Ichi, denoting one or first or any of that, and the Go being for guardian. It's kind of cute. Obviously, Ichigo is also their first child of Isshin and Masaki, so he's the first of the children, so he's Ichigo, right? But this idea of him being guardian and all of that, I think that plays again into him having that sort of protectorate role. Yeah, as far as main character names go, I do like Ichigo's name pretty well. I think Ichigo Kurosaki is a pretty solid name for your protagonist. I think it does everything that you really need to do for a protagonist for this setting as well. Anyway, I like, we get here, of course, Jidambo expresses there's a bunch of mean guys in there. And so we get more of the sense that, Jidambo's position and a lot of, his explanation of everything and like what we get for how he considers this to be defeat and all the grief that he has and all of that, that maybe Jidambo has suffered at the hands of Shinigami in the past, that he's personally sort of felt the prejudices of Shinigami at the very least. I think that's, that's an easy way to read this sort of there's a bunch of mean guys in here line. That, like Jidambo is probably the nicest person we'll meet here, that certainly there are other people that won't be so understanding or forgiving of Ichigo's scenario. But I do like this very determined look from Ichigo and this back and forth between the two of them. Of course, Jidambo being like, it's not that hard, and he really struggles to lift this gate up. I do like that we get our four characters kind of cast in the shadow of the gate here. I think that's really cool. Again, wish Yorichi was there, but hey, what are you going to do? Full page for throwing the gate up, which I do appreciate. Sells the magnitude of it. And I love the absolute surprise on everybody for him lifting the gate in one go. I will say, still not my favorite gate opening scene ever. My favorite gate opening scene is definitely Princess Mononoke. Best scene where a character opens a gate. Anyway, but I do like that this page, has this big intercut expression from Jidambo of like absolute fear, as we're immediately drawn to that within the panel. Like even before we start to read these other panels kind of collapsing down here. And I love the way that this is framed, because we know that Jidambo is facing that way in front of everybody, right? So it's an interesting sort of use of the panels, I think, where here we have, this expression that we as the audience can kind of see on Jidambo, and then we get this sort of on the right, all of our other characters kind of coming around to recognize this expression too. And that like it literally is situated on the page, similar to the way that it is within the reality of the scene. I do really appreciate that. And that, like, as a reader reading this page, you're almost certainly going to notice Jidambo's expression on the left there, and reading the other kind of panels, you don't really get context for it yet. So you're put into the position of course, all of our other characters wondering what's going on, and of course we turn page to find Ichimaru Gen, the captain of the third division. And excuse me, I do like Gen. We have seen him once before. He had that short conversation with Byakuya and Zaraki Kenpachi. And yeah, we immediately get him here, having shown up and just being on the other side of the wall, just waiting pretty much. We do get to see his Zanpakuto for the first time here, and it's got a pretty unique design. I like the spiral that it has, sort of a yin and yang almost balance, this coil that goes around it. And yeah, I've always been a fan of that design, and Gen's design in general. I think it's pretty effective. That he is this sort of character that the design really conveys this sense that he might be snake-like, or sort of looks like he's easygoing, but really maybe has some sort of other nefarious things going on, right? And we got a little bit of a sense of that with Byakuya, where whenever they had that conversation, he, like, Byakuya, it really felt like he was kind of giving Byakuya a hard time, or sort of speaking towards everything with the Ruki execution, right? And he's like, oh, I mean nothing by it, right? But we know it's still unsettled Byakuya. And so he's definitely the kind of character that will play innocent towards the more serious sort of things that he's doing, I think. Nevertheless, we get to see him here, and we know that he's a captain because, of course, he has his captain's Hiyori on over his Shinigami Shihakusho. And yeah, immediately I love Ichigo just being like, "Who the heck's that?" And we get this break in the page with Jidambo's absolute, just dripping sweat expression, expressing that, of course, this is Gen. And I like that Gen ends up being the most dominating kind of force on this entire page, as he expresses that this won't do. I really think this is a strong moment here, as we immediately cut from this look of Gen, just kind of smiling very creepily, and then immediately we get this slash across Jidambo's arm, and it's hard to even tell what's happened. But we see this page as this very large moment happens. There's this kind of force that is shot up across Jidambo, and then immediately in the next panel, his arm goes flying off behind him. And yeah, this is our first time, I think, getting a character that wasn't a hollow to lose an arm. It's been threatened before, but here it is, loss of arms significance. And so I of course going to take this time to talk about, like, the kind of way that dismemberment gets used in Bleach, because it is pretty significant. You will see characters get dismembered quite a lot. I mean, obviously they are characters are using swords. We have a lot of Shinigami running around. Dismemberment's going to happen. And so I think it's a way of essentially taking a character out of a fight and wounding them in such a way that, like, it's over. How are they going to continue to fight? This isn't some Blade of the Immortal. It's not like they're going to fashion their bone into a spear to stab you with or something. So, we have this sense that, yeah, Jidambo is completely made inefficient here, or rather, he's been dismembered. I talked a little bit about this previously on the channel, I believe, where I was kind of speculating on, maybe a connection to the idea of, if you're looking at these people as this sort of militaristic operation, and you think immediately of, the idea of this maybe being like a punitive sort of measure that makes the individual rely more on the group, right? That is at least the idea in the Yakuza. Whenever you cut off parts of the people's fingers, right, they lose, you cut off the pinky finger if they have some sort of infraction against the group. The idea being that, they were too individualistic, and now they need to rely on the group more, because ultimately it comes down to, you need to actually have a firm grip on your weapon, and you can't do that without all of your fingers. And so instead you have to rely on the others more. But it's always, this permanent mark that really shows that, in the past you have sort of made this transgression and you won't ever make it again. Or at the very least, you won't be able to bear your weapons against your, organization for sure, right? So it keeps you from ever making any more serious sorts of lethal transgressions. But certainly also the idea is that it makes you even more subservient to a degree. Because if they can take off your finger or your arm, they could definitely kill you, right? That it is a called shot, and that it is much easier to kill somebody than it is just cut off their finger, or in this case, cut off their arm. But I think also in Bleach, it continues to not only hold that connotation of completely making somebody unable to fight quite the same way, but also just in the sense of a manga, it's basically defeating a character without killing them, so that character can still sort of have interactions and still exist as a character and still maybe have growth, but doesn't have to immediately be murdered, right? So, it does allow some space creatively as a storyteller to kind of do some other things, but still take a character out of the picture. Also, you have to remember that this is still Shonen Jump. It's still aimed towards this kind of teenage audience, so you can't just be killing everybody left and right. But you can cut off their arms, and that's pretty powerful and gruesome. Also, it's a good way to show that sort of power. So dismemberment does get used a lot in Bleach. So far, it's mostly been against hollows, but as we start to see it be used against these human characters, I think it carries all these other social connotations too that it's worth being aware of. And of course, I think here, more than anything else, it really helps show us, Jidambo had to use the full heft of both of his arms to open these gates, right? And he's capable of fighting with just one axe, as we know. So by taking off Jidambo's arm, it assures that he's not going to open the gates anymore, which is exactly what Ichimaru Gen is protesting. I love that even though he's doing this pretty gruesome act and, maiming this giant for life, and also ensuring, hey, you're not supposed to open gates. I'm going to make it to where you literally are incapable of it. He still has this sort of smile on his face here, again, does, as he expresses that. And I love that we get this sort of, we see his hand here back sheathing his blade as we get his arm. So clearly Gin has the ability to strike very powerfully and from a distance, which I do like quite a lot. That, just sort of like Byakuya, like the other captains that we've seen in action so far, we know that Gin is capable of very rapid sort of attacks, and that he's even capable of attacking from quite a far distance away. Of course, it's impossible not to. Yeah, I say it's impossible. It's really easy to like Gin here. I think Gin quickly kind of becomes a fan favorite character for a lot of reasons, but not so much of which is or maybe one of which is that he's got this sort of disposition to him that yeah, he's gonna absolutely stop this. And it's interesting that, of course, Gin is the first person to respond to this threat, right? That as a captain, he immediately went to kind of make sure that everybody at the gate was stopped. Now, he could have attacked Ichigo or one of Ichigo's allies here, but instead he attacked Shidambo, which maybe tells you exactly his priorities, right? That, he cares maybe less about striking down these other people and more about proving the sort of punitive measures of Soul Society and the values of it first and foremost. And yeah, we come to the last bit of the volume here as we get this hand and this stroke of blood, which of course helps to reiterate that sense of amputation, but also I think in a way can also maybe speak towards that drawing of the sword very quickly that Gin did. Nevertheless, it's evocative, And I like especially, we do come from this image of Gin's hand at the very bottom here. I like that it slightly breaks outside of the paneling too. It sort of gives this pop to this character who has just done something kind of wild and incredible and very dangerous. And then, yeah, we immediately get this hand in the next page, kind of doing the same sort of fingers curled in the same kind of way. So I could see that that's meant to maybe be evocative of Gin's hand there. But yeah, it's very striking stuff. All in all, I really do like this chapter. Like many of them, I think the things that I really appreciate about it are, of course, those exchanges between Jidambo and Ichigo is ones that we might not expect, and I think really highlights the strength of Ichigo as a character, not just his physical strength, but his other capabilities at connecting with others and being very kind, even if he doesn't oversell it. I like that Ichigo is much more kind of earnest and maybe down to earth in that way. But yeah, and then of course I really do love Gin showing up to foil these plans. So we think everything's going to go well. We think everything is good. We think that, we've gotten a win for these characters and they're going to pass without sort of further antagonism. This really wasn't that big of a threat, Jidambo showing up. It just helped to establish Ichigo's power. And then we have this much more powerful character show up immediately to sort of shut them out and to establish the actual sort of threat of going up against Soul Society. Because unlike Jidambo, it seems like Ichigo, or not Ichigo, but Ichimaru Gin, there's another Ichi there. Ichi, another Ichi G character. But Ichimaru again is certainly somebody that doesn't have the sort of same compassion that Jidambo has, or at the very least, he's not going to see that rendered upon these enemies of Soul Society. So, I like those kind of hard juxtapositions between these three major kind of players in this chapter, between Ichigo and Jidambo and Gin. And yeah, it's good stuff. But let me know what you think about the chapter. Let me know, if I missed anything, if there's anything in the visuals that you picked up. I will talk more about the design of Gin's Zanpakuto next chapter, as we will get a little bit more from Gin that helps to really kind of connect the design of his Zanpakuto to, a little bit more of his character, I think. So look forward to that. I've held off on it on this chapter for that reason in particular, because otherwise, we'd be getting into maybe what would be spoiler territory for next chapter, whatever. Anyway, there's more things I want to say, of course, but as always, I try to keep this tied to just the chapter itself. And, sometimes I do gloss things, sometimes I overlook things. So if there's anything that you'd like to talk about, please let me know. If I turned you on to anything that you didn't notice, please let me know in the comments or give me a like to indicate that, hey, maybe you got something out of this. But I'm always willing to continue the discussion down below in the comments section. For now, though, we will be getting into the spoilers for this chapter, how this chapter connects to the rest of Bleach. And so immediately we come into Jidambo getting absolutely wrecked. I remember his arm getting cut off, but I think he gets cured. I think he gets replaced. I'm pretty sure either Orihime uses the Rika to heal it, whatever it is, Seiton Kaishun or whatever it is. I can't remember all the names of them, all the different amalgamations of her ability. I'm a bad fan. What can I say? No, I'm just really terrible with names. Is the reality of it. But I think she does end up rejecting the event of his arm getting cut off, because I'm pretty sure he continues to have two arms. Not that Jidambo plays a major role in the rest of Bleach anyway, but it is significant. Of course, that slicing off of his arm is, I think it's important for all the reasons that I highlighted. Of course, the shattering of weapons being a significant thing in Bleach, we've already sort of covered last chapter, especially the shattering of Zanpakuto. And I do believe it is the Bankai shattering, especially, that is grievous, because that is like your ultimate kind of incarnation of your blade. Excuse me. Oof, these are unscripted and only one take, so I do apologize for, anytime that you have to hear me cough, sneeze, et cetera, et cetera. But those things are gonna happen. Anyway, um, you know, I think as far as other things go, I love how Ichigo's sort of okay, let's go through, and so we get Ichigo maybe being more willing to take things at face value here, whereas I think he's more critical as we go throughout the story. So I think that's something worth mentioning. As far as the gates of the Soul Society and those being significant, I kind of wish we had gotten more of that with the Thousand Year Blood War invasion. I don't think these outer gates end up being that significant in that case. But then again, the Varvelt or whatever it is, the whole Quincy realm, kind of all of them being able to enter from the shadows of the Soul Society, maybe lets them get beyond those gates without having to penetrate them in quite the same way. But I don't quite remember the gates being as significant. I do know the other gate guards were mentioned in like some of the data books, I believe, something like that. But yeah, it would have been cool to see like all four of the gate guards fight Gerard Valkyrie. I don't know. There's ideas. Anyway, uh, of course, the most significant thing as far as connections to other chapters go here is Gin at the gates. As we saw, Kira Izuru was in the earlier shot, as well as Hisagi, and so it's notable that Tosin didn't show up to sort of stop this, but that Gin did. And I think the significance of that is that Gin doesn't want the Ryoka sort of intruding upon the plans here quite yet. Basically, I think, the way that I tend to interpret this action from Gin is that this is Gin acting on his own. Because, I don't know, like, I think, one, it's maybe meant to keep them out of the Soul Society for now to cause even more chaos later, whenever they eventually do penetrate the gate. But, yeah, I don't think I really read this as Gin outright coming here to kill Ichigo and his friends, because he certainly probably could if he wanted to, right? Instead, I read this a lot more as Gin ensuring that they don't pass the gate, but not really trying to kill them. But I don't know. I'm curious about what your take is on this, because I've always kind of traditionally read this as Gin acting as an independent sort of agent, or rather that at this point in the manga, Aizen's death hasn't been faked yet. So, we still need the blame to be kind of shifted upon other Shinigami, first and foremost. And I think if the Ryoka were already inside of Soul Society, that would cause problems for that. Of course, because then it becomes easy to sort of blame the Ryoka instead of cause infighting against the Shinigami. And I think at the end of the day, Ichimaru Gin is kind of not a person that really cares that much for Soul Society. I mean, because what we know about him is that he's a Rukon guy, kind of, orphan child, right? He grew up alongside Matsumoto, and that the whole reason for him becoming a Shinigami was to kill Aizen. It was to get closer to Aizen, to infiltrate his, inner circle, and to kill him. And basically, while Gin was gaining the power that he would need to actually strike down this guy, he realized, oh man, Koikoa Suigetsu is going to make it impossible for me to kill him. I need to figure out actually how to, overcome this power. And so Gin kind of bid his time and did as he would as he rose to the ranks and kind of proved himself as captain and all of that. But at the end of the day, I think Gin really just kind of like stirring the pot. I never really read Gin as a character as having a lot of compassion for Shinigami or the Seirei in general. I always sort of saw him less as this sort of less as like an enforcer of Soul Society's politics and more as his sort of independent agent. And so here, while we could certainly interpret him cutting down Jidambo as being like this really sort of like reiterating the sense of duty to Soul Society and all of that, I think the way that I tend to read it is as Gin kind of just acting out of his own sort of deference, and is that he doesn't really care for Jumbo, that he doesn't have that connection to Jumbo. The only person that I think Gin tends to have like an actual connection to is Matsumoto. I don't know. I feel like maybe he has some connection to his vice captain, Takira, right? I gotta hope. Um, but that's part of what this reread is for, right? Is to really dial in onto those things and to pay attention to them. I don't think I read Gin as completely sadistic. I just read him as vaguely evil. He definitely ends up being, this anti-hero type character, that he's willing to kind of sacrifice everything for his ultimate goal of getting rid of Aizen. But at the end of the day, Aizen is a person that is created out of this sort of unjust system and Shinigami in general, Shinigami like Aizen, are ones that Gen pretty I gotta figure pretty honestly detests. And so I can see, especially like Gin giving Bayuko a hard time in that earlier scene, is probably more of an earnest thing to come from Gin, because he probably hates the fact that Bayuko is willing to let his sister die, right? I mean, we don't get any actual insight on that, but the fact that like Bayuko is willing to allow Soul Society to hurt somebody that's close to him, Gin very much is the sort of character that doesn't want anybody to hurt Matsumoto, or at the very least, after he's made that sort of connection to her, he's willing to dedicate his entire life to killing the man who injured her in that way, right? That took that thing from her soul. So, yeah, it's pretty significant. Um, but I don't know. Let me know why you think Gin is at the gate. If you think it's more part of Aizen's plan, or if it's something sort of individualistic from Gin. I like I said, I definitely read it as Gin sort of on his own deciding to be here because it wouldn't work out for all of his plans, which is, of course, he does plan to go along with all of this and to escalate things. But yeah, I don't know. Let me know what your take is on this. Of course, that's the other thing is, he doesn't kill Jidambo here either. He definitely could use, like, Jidambo is completely prone and ready to be killed. He instead cuts off Jidambo's arm. And I think that speaks towards Gin, I don't know. I don't know if it's particularly sadistic, because he's not going to kill this person. He's going to make him sort of suffer and only have one arm and be unable to open this gate for the others, so on and so forth, etc., etc. But I don't know. I think this scene maybe to me shows an amount of restraint from Gin as well as amount of bloodthirstiness. Like there's like it's weird and it's coupled. Like he's willing to severely wound this character but not kill him. And he's willing to push Ichigo out of the way, but not murder him. I don't know. Maybe whatever he does use his Shikai, it should have killed Ichigo, and that was what he was trying to do, and Ichigo only managed to live because of luck and a good guard. But I think if Gin really wanted to kill Ichigo, he could have just hopped over the gate and fucking finished the job. So I really read it a lot more as Gin sort of just trying to stop them at the gates and keep them from entering more than anything else. Anyway, I could talk about that forever, but I think at the end of the day, this line, the gatekeeper's ain't supposed to open gates, ultimately kind of speaks towards a little bit of Gin's ethos, right? That people should fulfill their given roles, that a Shinigami should protect people. You shouldn't be taking parts of their souls and stuff. And so this gatekeeper opening the gates, fundamentally kind of going against what he's supposed to do, I think Gin is sort of criticizing and punishing that Gin maybe wants a little bit more structure and order and sense to his life. And I think if I read it in that way, that Gin wants to see a world in which like things make sense, I guess. And that like people follow these sort of like natural sort of rules and laws, then Gin being like, well, that guy did something wrong, he should be punished, and him not seeing any sort of system for punishment, and then he's like, well, then I have to be that system for punishment. I don't know. That's at least how I read that. But Gin never ends up being too overarching in his idealistic sort of nature. He tends to instead be very personally sort of driven. But there are a lot of other things that Gin does that are super questionable and weird, and I'm interested in looking into those whenever we get to them. But that has been this chapter of Bleach. As always, thank you for watching this one, folks. If there's anything that I didn't notice with the spoilers, if there's something that you'd like to point out, please let me know in the comments. Just make sure to tag it as a spoiler so that you don't spoil anyone else going through the comment section. But, as always, thank you for watching the video. Please give it a like. Please subscribe if you've been watching so far. I do upload things to this channel outside of just this series from time to time. I did give a review to the Bleach movie, so if you haven't seen that, go check that out if you're curious about the live-action movie. Hint, it is better than you might expect. That's all. That'll be my short blurb about it. But if you do want to take your support for this channel one step further, you can support me on Patreon. Right now, the screen is going to have the patrons that are currently supporting me. You could support me as little as $1 a month. Ooh. But the link for that is in the description. I thank you so much for supporting me. It really does mean the world to me. And that's it for this one. As always, I have been Carker Gold, your host to this series, reminding you that spirits are forever with you. Stay gold.